Welcome to the next session, the next roundtable. Welcome to the e-Society 2021 conference. This time, this year is fully digital, the second and the third day at least fully online. My name is GOCE ARSOVSKI from Metamorphosis Foundation. This session, as you probably know, is titled Algorithms, Privacy and Security. Let's talk about human rights. I would kindly ask my panelists to be promoted to co-hosts and turn on their webcams if possible, so that we can begin. One minute, please.
Good morning.
Hi, Christoph.
Hi, GOCE. Hi, nice to meet you. Nice to meet you all. Welcome. Hello. Good morning.
Hi, everyone.
OLGA, welcome.
And I'm also here.
Yes.
Hi.
Hello. Okay, I will give a short introduction as to what this session entails, and then I will leave the floor to the to my panelists to discuss. And also, by the way, we have interpretation ready. If you click on the lower part of your Zoom, you have a button interpretation. You can choose the language, and I would kindly ask my panelists not to speak too fast in order for the translators to have an easier day today. So without further ado, as I mentioned, this this session was envisioned as a roundtable discussion, and I presented myself. Very briefly, today we have Christoph from Stefan Batory Foundation from Poland. We have Olga from the American Bar Association, and ORSOLYA, who's a legal specialist from K-Monitor from Hungary. So they are my panelists for today. And feel free to use the chat to ask any questions, or if you have any comments during this session, we will try to address them at the end. Okay, so the topic for this this roundtable discussion is basically trying to motivate CSOs, academia, the media, and other stakeholders in taking part in the discussion that's largely being held between a very narrow or a very niche group of stakeholders, namely technical universities, governments, and to some extent the business sector. So CSOs, NGOs, or whatever you want to call them, are traditionally vocal on many issues. They have carved out space in the public narrative as defenders, supporters, or even promoters of certain values. Some even have gone on to becoming knowledge centers or think tanks, as it's more popular, on certain topics. They regularly engage the expert public, the general public, and they provide practitioners to a wide range of issues like environmental protection, citizens' participation, media literacy, many more. Yet when it comes to automated decision-making, artificial intelligence, and the likes, especially ADMs in official state use, and the risks, benefits, side effects that this process accompanies, the CSOs have been largely silent. This also includes the academia, the non-technical aside from academia, let's say, and the media in general. This, of course, can be attributed to a variety of reasons, such as a lack of expert technical knowledge for reviewing algorithms, for example, or human or financial resources, better yet, the lack of those resources in CSOs, and maybe even like a general sense that these topics, ADMs and AI, are too technical, and they belong to very few stakeholders, so that when CSOs engage in the discussion, they could feel inadequate. Basically, the goal here is to motivate CSOs, as I said, and others to more actively engage in the discussion, particularly those CSOs that are active and been working, some of them for decades, in the field of human rights and human rights issues. Then they can and they should be asked, they should have a seat at the table when it comes to discussing employment of ADMs or AI in state use, which is not the case today. So their engagement cannot only be seen as a positive effect on the particular process of utilizing the ADM, but also they could spread the positive message among the general public and their own stakeholders when it comes to actually using the ADM in practice. So given past research efforts by the EU and the European Commission, even our own research, some of the reports that have been produced in the past 2 or 3 years, which Metamorphosis Foundation also took part in, we have devised several key recommendations, let's say, for recommendations that are general, that can be applied for many countries, Western Balkans and beyond, but also the European Commission in their reports on artificial intelligence, the ethical guidelines, etc. They have been constantly circling, let's say, around the regulating part of the artificial intelligence utilization in government use. That's all the time I'm going to take from today. I want to open the floor to my panelists. So we will try to tackle some common topics or common themes when it comes to discussing this topic. But as I said, please feel free to use the chat and ask questions, or if you have any comments, we will really like to hear them. So let's start with Olga. If you like, you just need to unmute yourself, please. So what is, in a sense, what is the general awareness of ADMs and artificial intelligence among citizens and CSOs in particular? Do we have do you think we have any critical mass of interested parties when it comes to this topic?
Thank you, GOCE, and thanks a lot for the invitation. Happy to be here today. And this is indeed a very important question, because as you said, and I totally agree, that the level of general awareness of the topic on automated decision making is not that high. And probably before talking about the higher CSO engagement, we should be talking about raising this general awareness of the public. And of course, the CSOs could be especially helpful here, because they are working with smaller, more closed communities at their local level. So they could actually help to bring those explanations to broader public, because actually those are the people who become the target of ADMs. And it would make a lot of sense, first of all, to explain to these people why ADMs are being used, and on the other hand, what can be the consequences for these people once they become the target of such automated decision making. And I think there could be two ways to incentivize CSOs. First of all, to to explain to them that even if they are not particularly focused on ADM, or they don't even feel that this is something that could impact their activities, they still should think in broader terms about how this impacts their communities to whom they provide their services and whom they try to represent. And on the other side, it is, as always, an issue of funding, because we all know that civil society organizations have always to struggle to get proper funds to conduct their activities, especially when it comes to exploring new topics and trying to expand their activities. So this could be both a task for donors and grant providing organizations to somehow budget it in their expenses, and to provide some specific funds for research and advocacy on topics related to ADM, but also for the governments to take it from their side and also to reserve some public funds for engaging civil society organizations. And once CSOs become more engaged, this is also very helpful for the government, because when you take part in shaping the policy, this somehow creates the feeling of belonging. And once you feel that you created this policy, you've been part of making this decision, then it increases the chances of compliance once these tools are being implemented. And it also increases the trust, both from general public and from the civil society organizations, because we've seen in many countries on many examples that first people are very optimistic about these digital tools, but once they see that things are going wrong, then it's very difficult to get this public trust back. So I think that would be it for this initial contribution, and I would be happy to discuss it further.
Thank you, Olga. Yeah, this actually came out as a suggestion for the donor community as well, maybe to focus more on CSOs that actually engage already in this topic. Krzysztof, what do you think is the case about the general awareness in your country?
Well, it's I I don't know if I can expect the general awareness in this regard, especially since we have quite a lot of issues with, I would say, more closer things in terms of the rule of law and all of this stuff. So for sure, it's not one of the primary issues that the civil society organizations or in general the public is being aware of, but actually there are some examples of this, and this is I found quite interesting. That first of all, it is really in terms of the raising public awareness. As Olga also said, it's not popular among CSOs to deal with it because the topic seems to be a bit more complicated than others. And I think this is, I don't want to share any conspiracy theories, but I think this is also connected with the very initial narratives when the AI started, or automatic decision-making processes started to be more popular, when we had this narrative about the black box. So whatever you're doing, you never understand how does it work, which is actually not true, because artificial intelligence, or I mean, we're not at that stage of Terminator or Minority Report yet, but it's important to understand that it's a creation of human beings. It's especially when we're talking about these ADMs and AI solutions that are being implemented by the governments. This is the part of their broader policy. So there's an issue also of having these public officials held accountable, not the computers, but the public officials and the creators. And there is a good example, I think, in Poland, which is connected, wasn't an artificial intelligence, actually. I mean, in a terms, it wasn't a machine learning mechanism, but it was an automated decision-making process that actually exists in quite a lot of countries in the region. It's a system that allocates the judges to the very specific court cases. And I was also, I'm a lawyer, and I was trying to get the algorithm from the Ministry of Justice that operates the tool. And finally, actually 2 months ago, no, maybe more now, it's like a couple of months ago, we are able to win the case, and now the algorithm is published on the website of the Ministry of Justice. But I'm bringing up this example as to show that it's very, in terms of public awareness, it's very important to show the context. Because as I was saying, we have some rule of law issues, including the independence of judiciary. And the mechanism which was introduced by this government, who is in power now, on allocating the judges, when it was non-transparent, the people, thought, okay, this is not a random system. This is actually a very manipulative, or it could be very manipulative system. So it was a great thing for us, actually, and by us I mean some ADM experts, CSOs working on the topic, still a very limited number. To show to the public, to show to the journalists, but also to show to the politicians and judges that this is exactly what we are talking about. You are implementing automated decision-making process that has an impact on rights and obligations of citizens. I mean, it is important why this particular judge is taking care of your case. So what we actually need to raise awareness, we need to gather an evidence. And I would say, even before the first stage, before engaging other CSOs and explaining to them that this is something that it's here and it's going to be with us. And if you are, for example, in a CSO that deals with discrimination, you should think about engaging in this field as well. But before even engaging CSOs, I think there's not enough knowledge among public officials themselves. And there is this hype for technology that there's a lot of examples are being implemented, or a lot of technologies are being implemented by public officials, but still the knowledge and competencies among themselves, how to use it, what are the risks, what to do if something is obviously wrong, it's still very, very small. So I think parallelly with CSOs, we should also think about how to educate the public officials in this regard as well.
Thank you, Krzysztof. Yeah, I would just like to get in one sentence before I give the floor to Orsi. What you mentioned, I think it's crucial. So a lot of times, even the public officials or the CSOs, everyone, when it comes to these topics like ADMs and AI, the initial reaction is system first, and this is why even our discussion for today says let's talk about human rights, because at the point of every end point of these systems is actually physical persons, real life persons that have effects on them, positive or negative, by using these algorithms. And a lot of the times, especially when employed by the states, the governments, these algorithms or ADMs or AI, they are being blamed to an extent on when it comes to discrimination or breach of privacy or any other basic human right. Orsi, care to add any comments on this topic?
Okay, absolutely. I'm really also pleased to be here with you. I absolutely agree with Krzysztof on a lot of topics, and we have got the same situation with the rule of law and corruption topic as well. So AI is basically not, there hasn't been a lot of talking about this between the CSOs, but to come up with our own example, we are an anti-corruption NGO, and we weren't so technical like 4 or 5 years ago, but we went after the transparency of these algorithms, and so or the procurement of these algorithms, and so that's how we came into this field. So that was not our first and core interest at the beginning. But we also see that it's becoming more and more important. So even CSOs were not so much interested now, may be engaged later, because this has this might has also a really important corruption or threat, or it can affect procurement of these algorithms. So it's also a very important topic, according to me and our organization. To add to your original question, to jump back, we don't see a lot of CSO engagement in Hungary, but we have an AI coalition, and some CSOs are also inside, but and it also has an ethical group who are working on the legislation or how to regulate algorithms, but this is not working transparently, which is also a very big problem. And also there are some recommendations coming from the AI strategy that CSOs should be involved. We don't see this involvement. Even in some cases, we see that if it refers any kind of face recognition techniques, they say that it's a national security related problem. So it's basically a secret.
Thank you. So what I gather from this, at least until now, basically, regardless of whether the country is, let's say, a Western Balkan country, it's in the EU or still not in the EU or whatever, we all have like similar challenges, at least when it comes to public awareness. Of course, maybe the technical side is more advanced in some countries and regions than others, but when it comes to CSO engagement, academia and media engagement, also we have a lot of similarities, unfortunately. Would you agree that as these topics progress, or they are trending, let's say, more and more in the public narrative, it would become easier for CSOs and other stakeholders to basically try to engage in the discussion? Or would you say that as more and more ADMs are utilized in state use, the secrecy part that Orsi now mentioned, the national security aspects would become predominant in the narrative, and again, the public and interested CSO will be shut off from the discussion? What do you think?
Okay, I can start first.
Okay.
Or, okay. No, Olga, go on. I will.
Okay, thanks. So I just wanted to say that it's as in everything, it's very important to catch the moment, because it's either you manage to become a part of this discussion now, when it is still not too late, when the sphere is still being shaped, or afterwards it will be too difficult, because if the government is not ready to accept you as an equal stakeholder sitting around the table and accepting, or at least listening to your opinion, then they will just do as always, adopt the policies, and then you can what civil society can do is just criticize, or maybe be vocal, maybe raise some points that this is the risk, this is the challenge, this is the violation, but this is it. Then probably the only thing what would be left for CSOs, for digital rights defenders, is to go to the courts and to try to defend the rights, and as it is already happening, but still it is just let's say the beginning of all this long way that we have to go through. So I would say the government would not come to CSOs and ask, come to us, we want to listen to your opinion. It is largely upon CSOs themselves to actually come to respective authorities and say that let's talk together, let's at least try to find these common points for cooperation, and as every stakeholder can bring his own perspective, perspective and their own expertise, this could still be very much helpful and efficient at the end in shaping these policies and regulation around AI and ADMs. So I would say, let's do it now rather than wait for governments to come and ask.
Exactly. I just basically wanted to say the same thing. It's about momentum. I think, like, coming back to your question, is when, you know, everything will be more popular and the people will be aware, it will be too late, basically, because we will have best regulations, and we will have, first of all, maybe bad practices. And as you perfectly know, anywhere in politics, if you are accustomed to something, the people are, you know, used to follow the certain paths, it's really hard to change it. So I think this is exactly the good moment that we should be very hard about it, and there's no time to wait. And I mean, there are some things going on, like, for example, in the European Union, there's this whole discussion about the Artificial Intelligence Act, which is important, but my pain is that it's mostly concentrated on the AI itself, not the automated decision-making processes. And when we're talking about the automated decision-making processes, is you know, something which is, again, crucial in terms of relations between states or authorities and citizens. And this should be indifferently whether it's you know, high technology or it's a bit more simplistic process. So in recording progress, that's good. And if when it comes to the decision, I would make just a short parallel. Like, when we're talking about the civic engagement or consultations, whatever, in the decision-making process, we mean that we're not consulting the people when the law is there. We should consult the people when the law is being elaborated, that there are some, you know, initial concepts, etc. This is the same with the automated decision-making process. I mean, on the very detailed level. So this is the place that actually CSOs, let's bring back the example of the ones that fight the discrimination, and saying, like, okay, I mean, you want to implement this particular technology, let's be sure that the data that you are using are not actually multiply the discrimination, because maybe you use the old data, maybe you use the data that will target the people from the poor neighborhoods, whatever. So this is on the very small practical scale, but also in terms of elaborating the biggest policies, policy framework, the bigger policy framework that we should be engaged, because we are kind of connected with people. And what is the last sentence now, what is even more important in terms of engaging CSOs is that we are better equipped, I think, in terms of capacity and understanding in gathering the information or evidence when something is going on, something is wrong with the system, and we can give a feedback. So to have this, we have to elaborate the relations with the implementing authorities from the very early stage.
Thank you, Krzysztof and Olga, for the comments. Yeah, so basically what we did last year or 2 years ago, who knows, in this pandemic. Anyway, we did a research called Algorithms 2.0, which targeted several countries, and we researched the utilization of ADMs and AI in respective countries. North Macedonia was one of the countries, of course, and we found that not only, as Krzysztof said in the beginning, not only the public officials are unaware of the technologies that they are supposedly should be using, as you mentioned, the case with the judicial, the allocation of judges, which unfortunately it's also the case in our country. It's not that they are not aware, but there's this push, there's this lack of motivation to actually learn more, and actually disseminate information to the public. And what Orsi said, and I mean, most of you agreed in the previous 10 minutes or so, when we have uninterested public and uninterested CSOs, the regulation will come. The regulation will step in, and then we will just, as unfortunately as usual, we will be reactionary when it comes to the regulations. We will comment, we can try to go to the courts, but as Christoph, as you said, once it goes mainstream, it's very hard to modify it. So if you could pinpoint several, let's say 1 or 2 recommendations from our research in the past year, what would those be? What would your messages be? Like the positive message from ORSI, when they started from an organization that tackles corruption, then they ended up researching ADMs. What would those recommendations be for our CSOs and the general public? Or see if you like. Okay, Olga, go ahead.
I will just briefly say that I'm the only one who was not part of this report, but I read it honestly, and I believe this is one of the very important initiatives again, because it sheds the light on what are actually those examples of automated decision making which the governments in different countries are using. It helps to get this comparative perspective of what are the approaches, what is similar, and what is different in the countries, and I found it very helpful. And this is also important because for the public and for CSOs to react to this ADM, they first need to know that the government is actually using such systems, and for the public it is very important to know what are those services where these ADMs are being applied. And it's not, we must be honest, it's not easy for the regular citizen, just even if you tell that, for example, the court system is using the automated decision making, then, for example, if you are not a lawyer, if you are just you have nothing to do with all this AI topic, you will not even probably understand what it means, how this is happening. So that would be very good if there was this open list, open registries of what are the ADM systems which are being used, so that at least you can go to this web page and consult it and read what are these services actually, because maybe you are even using them without ever knowing that the ADM is being applied there. And of course, all the recommendations you've been providing in the report are important, but given the specific focus of our today's discussion, I think my favorite would be of harnessing this cooperation between different stakeholders about both making these ADMs more transparent, more accountable, but also about shaping the regulation around them. So the dialogue is really important, and I think this is a very important recommendation that was made.
Orsi, I see your hand. You should unmute.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. I wanted to be a bit pessimistic because in case of ADMs, I think that we are a bit late, because we see ADMs are growing from the ground like trees. So maybe we are a bit late for a comprehensive regulation. That's one thing that I want to add. And that's why I want to emphasize here our 8th recommendation, which is develop national standards, which would be used in my wishful thinking retrospectively for ADMs as well. not just AI, because we are in the midst of AI regulation. Because that's what we learned from our study as well, that even public officials aren't aware of what they are using. And just today I read an article about how important is this, that we don't have clear standards about that basically now if you are going to procure an ADM or an AI technique, you have a price for the source code, and you have a much lower price for if you want to just use the software for the for a license agreement. And that's one of the reasons why basically most of the public administration bodies only buy the license agreement, which leads to serious problems because we cannot oversee the algorithm and that might lead to serious breaches of human rights.
Yes, let's not forget the whole idea here is that we should not shy away, and we should not give room for the state officials to hide behind the use of these algorithms and ADMs, because at the end, it's the real humans that have, again, positive or negative consequences because of that software making the decision. And this human-centric approach and human rights first approach should be at the very forefront when it comes to these systems being used. I mean, used in governments. Basically, the next thing I would like to touch upon is, do you believe that, as Orsi said, a bit pessimistic, we might be a bit late, but do you believe that by abusing to an extent the term AI and artificial intelligence, connecting it to all sorts of quote unquote magical solutions, silver bullets, we are actually going into a territory where a government can employ basically any kind of ADM or AI and shield itself from any transparency in the procurement process up to the monitoring and evaluation of the system. Can they just say, well, the software decided, you get that judge and that's it, basically, when it comes to judge allocation?
Yeah, I mean, this is I love this topic because I think this is crucial. This is like in, you know, in politics, this is a battle of narratives as well. And when you know, I mean, as I said, for me, is like any other decision-making process. It doesn't matter if it's automated or it's a human being, like 100% human being-led decision-making processes. I think we all agree that decision-making process within democratic states should be open and transparent and understandable for the people, because the people are facing the consequences of this decision-making process at the very end. So what I'm trying to do when I'm, you know, building the narratives and talking about it, this is exactly the same. I mean, I'm not concentrated on the technological part, because technological part is basically translation of human language, the translation of the policy targets put up by the public officials, and very often it is, as you say, a kind of a shield that public officials think that they will protect them. I mean, there are many cases, actually not from Poland itself, but already from US, that politicians and public officials were like very aware what are the consequences. And even though they are, they put the green light and the automated decision-making process on, this is an example of having the access to some health benefits in terms of having the support at home, etc., for ill people. They were, I would say, too afraid to say openly, okay, we're changing the policy. We will get you you will get less support. It's much easier for politicians that in general don't like to be held accountable to say, oh no, it's not us, it's a computer is saying this, right? But we can't. I mean, this is one, if we're talking about the role of CSOs and the wider public, I think this is one of the very crucial things that we should fight this narrative, because then, especially taking into consideration that there are more examples of automated decision-making process, and this is the future for many reasons, that they will replace the traditional decision-making processes. We have to fight this narrative that it's something new. I mean, I'm super happy when we won the case to get this algorithm of the system that allocates the judges. We lost at the first instance, also because the judges there thought like, okay, it's just a technical information. I mean, it's you're asking about how the computer program looks, and thanks to building not really legal narrative, but more like this broadly understood narrative around it, like, okay, I mean, this is done by the computer. It's a part of the very same decision-making processes, how you are choosing the judge. Then I had the impression that in the second instance, when we won, the judges were thinking, okay, yeah, I mean, this is the part of the same coin, actually. I mean, this is about the decision-making, doesn't matter. And actually there is a quotation in the ruling saying so, that the automated decision-making processes will get more and more popular, but it doesn't mean that they shouldn't be as transparent as any other decision-making process within the state.
That sounds great. I mean, fortunately, we do not have any transfer of those judicial decisions. I mean, in other countries where we have similar.
Sorry, guys. I mean, still is unfortunately a precedent. I mean, this is this is something that we achieve under the existing freedom of information laws. But you never know. I mean, this is also why we are fighting for the regulation, that it's as we have, I don't know, administrative procedure code. And you can understand this. We should have something similar there.
Exactly. Like you can inquire into the decision-making process if a human person is making the decision in any country, basically, any democratic country, except when it comes to systems making the decision. And that's the whole problem here. Olga, Orsi, add to the discussion here.
I just wanted to say here that I believe we should be starting from asking ourselves, why are we using this or that technology? Because the technology is meant to serve people and to make their lives easier. If we are talking about building, for example, the welfare state, but by implementing the automated decision-making, which is actually discriminating and stigmatizing against the most vulnerable and the most marginalized communities, we are already not making the life of those people better. Yes, this is better maybe for the civil servants. This is less workload for them. Maybe they can say they made the provision of the service more efficient. But then we always need to monitor how the technology is actually performing. It's not only about putting it in place and then not really following what are the deficiencies and what are the shortcomings of that technology, because especially with the automated decision making, when we are just trying to implement those technologies and integrate them in public services, of course there will be some things which will go wrong, and this is why it is so important first to start from the human rights impact assessment of those technologies, but also to do this monitoring to make sure that they are still efficient and that actually we are not making the situation worse than it was before the employment of those technological solutions. But also, I'm also a lawyer, so I'm thinking when we will be talking about these regulations, we will really struggle to define what is this decision making in itself, not talking about the automated decision making and all these further specific terms which we will be using, because this is very important not to use too broad and also not to use too narrow definitions, and to make sure that, because we have these AI national strategies which are so much optimistic, which are so much written in broad words, providing just the framework for the regulation, but then it has so little to do with the practical problems and challenges that people have to face, even when those automated decision-making solutions are being applied. So that all is a very complicated system, and it all has to be done in complex. As you said before, we can't just put the solution and then sometime later on discuss the regulation. And again, the regulation can't be written in stone, because the technology is developing so fast that it has to correlate between each other. Yeah, so that would be from my side.
Okay, so Orsi, if you want to jump in, because we are nearing the end of the discussion, I would like to end on a more, let's say, positive note. It's not that we advocate, or me personally, we don't advocate for less digital transformation and digital inclusion. Far from it. The digitalization process, the employment of ADMs in state use, and AI could reap much more benefits to society as we know it. It will definitely change some of the things we're used to, the ways we're used to function, at least in a democratic society. But I believe the positives vastly outweigh the negatives. But still, I would like to circle back a bit to what Orsi said, actually, and the whole idea behind this panel. Do you have any, let's say, words of encouragement? How can we motivate more and more CSOs to try to actively engage, proactively engage? As Olga said, we can't wait for the government to come and ask us for feedback. We have to go to the governments when they are even thinking about utilizing ADMs and AI. So do you have any tips? How can CSOs, media, the academias actively engage, especially the non-technical CSOs, let's say?
So I think, like, the first suggestion from me would be, don't be afraid of the topic. If you are active in the issue of human rights, authorities, transparency, etc., this is the part of your work. If not now, it will be very soon. So, so if you I mean, you can't be overwhelmed by the technical stuff, because also on the other side of the table, the public officials are not any wiser than you are, and you're building the knowledge about it together. And also, this is a unique momentum, also in the sense that we are all learning it, and it's a nice adventure. Even though it's not only about the protecting human rights and having public officials accountable and transparent, this is a very interesting journey. But on the practical sense, I think this is also something that you have to, especially if you're working with beneficiaries that can be targeted by the automated decision-making process. Please look whether there are any problems with this, challenges. They do feel that they are being discriminating. So gathering a knowledge, and I think also the gathering a knowledge for the governments, and this is what exactly actually we did during our report, is basically trying to gather the examples of the ADM uses. And at least I know it was also in many other countries, but in Poland, there was nobody that knew all about it. I mean, everyone was thinking the same. And again, I just want to echo what Olga said, because it's very important. In the same way that you are following the proposals for law, and you have a regulatory assessments, and in regulatory assessments, it also like, okay, what is the problem? how we see the solution. Do we need a legislation for that, or maybe, you know, there's another way? You should also engage from the very early stage and try to make your path. I mean, this is just, you have to call authorities or email them and saying like, okay, let's check it whether we really need technology here. I mean, what's the justification for that? So do your work as usual in terms of having public officials held accountable, and don't be afraid of it.
Okay, I just want to add a little comment on this, that if you are a small or a not too big NGO, just look for partnerships in the academic field as well, and there are national or international anyhow. So if you are doing it together or you collect your experiences, that might be more efficient.
I also want to add to this that use this moment to probably become the leader in this field. Build your capacity from now and choose some very specific niche here that you can actually then build your value. And then probably this would be the case, that rare case when the government would actually come and say, yeah, listen, we really need your expertise here because you are, if not the only, but at least one of the best in this field. And this topic is not going to go nowhere. It is not going to disappear. It probably will only gain new and new challenges. So it is important for CSOs not to distance themselves from this topic as something which is not relevant to their activities, but actually try to look broader and to see what is their stake there and what could be the contribution that they could make here.
Thank you, Olga, and everyone. Basically, I would really like to repeat what was being said as a sort of a motivation for others listening in. I believe that a diverse group of experts, a diverse group of CSOs and experts that are working on similar but different fields like corruption, I mean, anti-corruption, human rights abuses, immigration, healthcare, anything that basically has a human-centric and human rights first approach can and should have say when it comes to their country's utilization of ADMs and AI. Yes, we might not be there yet, but as all my panelists confirmed, this is the time to start engaging, and this is the time to start building that knowledge base. Tomorrow, when the need arises, which will be different timing, of course, in every country, but we should be prepared and we should be willing to engage in this discussions, because there are no greater defenders of human rights than CSOs. Traditionally, they've been very vocal about these points, and I believe that going forward in the next years, if these CSOs that have decades of experience when it comes to human rights should be included, should have like a part of their work devoted to technical solutions and their monitoring and evaluation. Thank you to my panelists for joining today's session. I would quickly just run through the Zoom chat. Do we have any questions we try to address? Okay, so we have Nenad says, in Macedonia, it is difficult to eradicate corruption because it starts first with small echelons from municipalities. Okay, so in a lot of countries in the EU especially, we have examples where especially the corruption or the human factor in decision making is being used as the justification for utilizing ADMs. In a sense, when you have a system deciding, you can't bribe the system, basically, and that's being largely utilized in border crossings and goods. Goods crossing the transiting borders. I would point you to what Christoph said in the beginning. If you'd like to, you can watch the recording afterwards again. But he basically says we cannot shield the responsibility from the decision making from the public official, whether that's the border cross or the state courts or whatever. Behind every system there is a procurement process, and they are unfortunately not today, but there will be a set of standards what can and cannot be used in these systems, what kind of rules and guidelines have to be adhered to procure the software and to use it. So yes, utilizing ADMs can be used for good, basically for reducing the corruption levels, even in the local municipalities, in the small in the local governments, but they always come with a risk. If we see the misuse in the central level with the I'm sure you know the examples from our country with the ACMIS system for allocating judges, then you can imagine these systems can also be misused in every other instance, basically. So if we okay, I hope that answers your question. If we don't have any more questions, I put several links in the chat for resources you might find useful, because even as we speak in November, now in December, we have several meetings and several guidelines and recommendations going forward from the European Commission when it comes to ethical guidelines for AI. And I encourage you to follow these developments. And of course, I think what Orsi said, we are always stronger together. So if you try to engage in these topics, please feel free to reach out. Metamorphosis Foundation is always open for cooperation when it comes to these topics, at least. And because not everyone has all the answers, of course, like anything in life, but together we can gather all of our knowledge and have a stronger voice when the time comes for us to voice our concerns regarding ADMs and AI. Again, I would like to thank my panelists for today's discussion. Christoph, Orsi, Olga, thank you for joining. This has been the end of the second session for today's e-Society Conference 2021, and we will continue with other panels during tomorrow and the day after tomorrow. So I invite you to follow our conference in the next 2 days as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care. Good luck. Good luck.
Good luck.
Yeah, good luck.